Hey everyone, Saul from Three Kingdoms Games here. Coming to you today with a little bit of a how to get into board gaming video. Now, this could be useful to someone who's new who wants to get into the hobby, or someone who wants to get people into the hobby who is a veteran and just doesn't know the right games to pick. Now, I get it all the time where people come in and they've never played board games before, or they've played a few and they want to get into them because all they've ever really played is like the Monopoly and traditional, more classic Hasbro games. So, here is my list of games that I would recommend to get people into the game. Now, there's three major ones that a lot of people start with in modern board gaming. First one is Carcassonne. Now, Carcassonne is a tile placement and worker placement game where literally all you have to do is place a tile and decide how you want to place your worker. Depending on how you place them, if you place them as a thief on the road, a knight in a city, or a farmer in the field, you'll score points differently, and the point is to get the most victory points possible. It is that simple, and because it is a tile placement game with tons of tiles, there is a variable replayability that is quite high with this. Plus, because the mechanics are so simple, but the strategies are so deep, it also lends itself to easily getting people in, as well as getting people kind of hooked and wanting to play more. Next up is one that we've all known, it's Settlers of CATAN. It was originally came out in 1995, and it is a 3 to 4 player game. Now, I would recommend playing this with 4 players. You can play it with 3, but if people don't place things the right way, they might cut themselves out of the game accidentally. So the way it works is that you and the other players are all settlers trying to develop CATAN effectively. You do this by getting goods, so different raw materials, to build roads, to build settlements, and you can also trade these with people. So you can trade, wood for sheep or whatever to get the components you need to build the appropriate pieces. And again, this is a victory point based game. So based off having the longest road and other things and your settlements and all the actions you do over the course of the game, you do get victory points. Now, again, this is one of those where mechanically it's actually a very simple game. It seems like a lot, but there's a ton of replay value there, and I'd highly recommend this to a lot of new players. Next up, we have Ticket to Ride, which came out in 2004 and is a 2 to 5 player game. The way this game works is you are trying to collect matching cards to play them out to complete roads, complete the tracks, and try to connect certain locations to certain locations to complete tickets that you have. So it might be like Chicago to Detroit, things like that. And also, just in general, control the board in certain ways, because you'll get points based off having the longest road, how many, roads you control, as well as each ticket will score you points. So again, very simple mechanically, but there's a lot of strategy there in how you can cut off people and how to, maneuver yourself to connect tickets better. So those are the 3 that a lot of people start with, and I would highly recommend. Now, the first co-op game for a lot of people, if you don't want to do a competitive game, is Pandemic. This came out in 2008, and it's a 2 to 4 player game where you and your teammates, I guess in this case because it is a cooperative game, try to stop this spread of different plagues in the world. Now, you each will have your own role, and again, mechanically this game works very simply because you have X number of actions you can take each turn, and then you have to flip over cards to show where the viruses are spreading. If you, cure one of them, you will no longer have to worry about that one, and the game will get easier that way, but also if they appear in the wrong areas, it can get drastically more difficult as it goes. Really fun game. Highly recommend it if you want something that's less competitive and where it's kind of you versus the board, which is how I like playing a lot of games. I do play competitive games as well, but these kinds of games can also be turned into single player if you want to play by yourself. You just play as multiple characters. Next up is Betrayal at House on the Hill. Now, this is probably the first time I ever played an asymmetric game. The way this game works is you and your buddies are exploring a haunted house. It is a tile placement game, so there is a lot of replayability. And as you explore the house, you will uncover items, events, and omens. Now, omens will trigger something which will start the second half of the game, which is one of you will become a traitor. You all know who that is. The rest of you will become the survivors. The survivors will have one goal. The traitor will have their own goal. And then it becomes a who will win kind of situation. Now there's 50 variable haunts, which are these scenarios. So there is a ton of replay to this game. I love this game. I have played it a ton. There's Betrayal at Baldur's Gate. If that's something you'd rather have a fantasy flavor to, you can get an expansion to it, which will add another 50 haunts and a new floor. So this game has a ton of growth potential and a ton of replay value. So I would highly recommend it to anyone who's trying to get new players into a game, or any veteran group that wants to keep playing. Now, these next 5 are ones that I think are going to become modern classics if they haven't already for you. So Stone Age, which is a worker placement game that came out in 2008, is 2 to 4 players, and each of you will take on the role of a Stone Age chieftain trying to have your tribe survive. You'll place your workers in different locations to gain food, to make more workers, gain resources, gain technology, and pretty much evolve through the Stone Age. Every action you take will lead to different victory points. You have to feed your people, hence the food. And it just has a ton of replayability, very simple mechanically, and it's just an overall great game that I fell in love with as soon as I played it. Next, for the co-op fans, Flashpoint Fire Rescue, which came out in 2011, is a 2 to 6 player co-op game where you and your teammates at this point take on the role of firefighters. Each of you will have your own specific ability, and you can even trade them up during the game if you're playing with the abilities. You are trying to go through a burning building, save people before it burns down. That is the point. That is that simple. You can then play with advanced rules to make this more difficult. Highly recommend this game. I think it's a must for all board game collections. Then we have Colt Express. Now, Colt Express is a ton of fun. Came out in 2004. Is a 2 to 6 player game where you are all bandits trying to rob a train. The board is legitimately a 3-dimensional train. I think it's a ton of fun. It has an interesting mechanic for how you can move around the board, knock people back, knock people around the train, as well as you program your turn. So it's essentially like you're building a film reel for how the round is going to play out, and then you reveal and everyone takes their actions in the order that they put them down in. So you can end up getting, messed up by someone moving when you didn't think they would, or being knocked out of the way, etc. Great game, tons of replayability, highly recommended. We have Champions of Midgard, another worker placement game. Now, a lot of these games you will notice are Euro games because generally new players don't always like the heavily take that kind of mechanics. So, Champions of Midgard came out in 2015, is a 2 to 4 player game where you and your opponents are all becoming Jarls. You're all vying for the new Jarl of your town because the Jarl has died. You are trying to gain the most glory as possible. So you go around collecting soldiers to help you fight different minions, monsters, Drogar, things like that around the board. You also go, get resources like food and stuff because you need to feed people when you send them on these journeys to kill certain monsters. Look at runes for, your destiny cards, things like that. A lot of fun, ton of that, Norse flavor to it. So, again, highly recommended because of the simplistic nature of the mechanics, yet the high replayability in the different character cards, as well as what you can do, play-wise. A lot of strategy there. Plus, then there's expansion content that is also very good that you can add on to this game as well. And lastly, we have Five Tribes. This came out in 2014. It is a 2 to 4 player game where you move around pieces on the board to try to do specific actions. Depending on what you finish your action with, you get different things. So for instance, you'll pick up a bunch of workers, move them around the board, and depending on where they land, they'll do whatever they do based off what you take away from the board. You might kill other workers on the board. You might remove stuff from people's collections of things to stop them from getting victory points. You might get genies that will give you magic powers to help you. You can also, buy stuff from the trade row if you collect merchants. So lots of different strategies you can do there because of the way the game scores and all the different possibilities of how you move stuff, as well as the random assortment of figures as they're put down at the beginning of the game, makes this highly replayable, have a high depth of skill while still mechanically being very simple, and rewards long-term planning. So that's my list of games I'd highly recommend that you bring to any kind of gathering where you're expecting new players, or if you want to try to get new players into gaming, or if you're a new player and you want to get into more like serious board gaming. There you have it. Tell me below if there's any of these videos, or sorry, if you'd like me to make a video that's more in depth on any of these board games. I read all the comments to all my videos. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. It's an easy way to support us. If you do subscribe, remember to hit the notification icon. It's an easy way to keep up to date on all the content that's coming. You can follow us on all major social media. That's in the description box below, as well as follow our blogs at threekingdomsgames.com. I'll talk to you next time.